Hey everyone and hello, this is Shepard, back with some juicy new content. Malzeno Rise Sunbreak right around the corner. I got myself a Capcom creator link down to nexus.gg. If you haven't picked up the game already, pick that up there, help support the channel, or check out the channel over at twitch.tv/sdshepard. In any case, today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Gunlance. Gunlance, sometimes a little bit of a victim of the Gunlance curse. You have yourself a demo, and within the context of the demo, you're like, wow, this weapon's so good. Finally, Gunlance is back, baby. And, you know, it's only because it was in comparison to weapons that don't have full critlet stats, 100% affinity or close to it, max crit boost, and all those other things that it seems good. But that being said, some really cool tricks here. Namely, the full barrage skill is really interesting. So I don't know about you. When I played Gunlance, and it's not like there were many people that did, I think it was the second least popular weapon throughout the entirety of Rise. I would mostly just focus on doing only full bursts. Sometimes after doing a guard edge, I would use a worm stake, and very rarely I would use the actual wyvern fire, which just never really felt like it was worth using. Yeah, sometimes if a monster was going to roar, it would be kind of okay, because you'd be able to block it now in Rise, but normally I never use it. But in this case, the ability uses everything all at once, and the really interesting thing about it is no matter what state your wyvern fire is in, it will go through and make sure that it's usable. So if it's not on cooldown, you don't have to cool down that heat gauge. That's nice. You get into the attack a little bit faster, which is pretty important with Malzeno. But even if it's still on cooldown because you used it before and you just had the wire bugs, you can go ahead and use it again, and it'll perform the full burst. And as you can see, it does quite a lot of damage. It's really amazing. So kind of combines a lot of the things about the weapon that were a little bit frustrating, like how am I going to get good shelling damage, how am I going to use my wyvern fire, how am I going to use the stake. Man, it doesn't feel like this part of the weapon is all that good at all, but now you can use all those. Of course, with stance switching, there's not too much to do. You can stance switch, and I do have it right now, the Earth Splitter, to sometimes occasionally boost up my shelling damage or get a quick worm stake out, something like that, sometimes go through a roar. Now, we don't have the Roaring Wyvern yet, the Heat Blade from Frontier, but when the full game comes out, that's probably what I'll be switching back and forth between. So full burst when Wyvern Fire is on cooldown, or if it's just the sort of fight where I'm going to want to have, a lot more shelling true damage, or just going back to the Heat Blade for more normal damage is all. So getting a bit into Malzeno. Difficult fight, very interesting. Reminds me a little bit of Nergigante when he gets into his full morbed out form. Interesting in the sense that he's got his normal non-enraged form, which is really pretty easy once you get used to the tempo, right? He has a lot of large openings, so he'll do one very strong attack when he's not enraged, and then have a moderately, long period where he doesn't really do anything, giving you a good opening. When he does enrage, he does move just enough faster so that you'll start getting really punished, unless you're coming out of a counter quite a bit faster. Eventually, though, he'll either end up attacking you enough, which, unless you're doing some sort of a TA, he will inflict the bleed status on you, the blood blight, and pretty quickly after that, he'll go into his full awakened Morb Xeno form. And that's interesting because it's a little bit reminiscent of Nergigante. You hit those spots enough, his chest and his arms, and I think probably his head counts too, and it'll proc a topple, knocking him out of the form, and that feels earned. Rise, in its base game, had a lot of monsters that just gave you those topples. Sometimes it felt for free. Like, everything was just, flipping over all the time, and, it was really amazing when you were getting it off with either, base game, World, Devil Joe, or Iceborne Alatreon, because it felt earned, but there was a lot of unearned topples. Same thing with the Apexes in Rise. This one, it's hard enough and satisfying enough that when you pull it off, you're like, okay, I was fighting him in a much, more difficult form, and I got this topple to push him out of that, and it works out in that way. Of course, when he is morbed out form, the patterns change a little bit. He starts to incorporate a lot more double attacks. So something that Rise suffered from in its base game is a lot of times you'd have your super counter moves, so like Anchor Rage on Lance, or pretty much, its counter peak performance on Charge Blade, where you'd be able to use your Wire Bug to perfectly block the attack and counter attack with really almost no risk. There really weren't that many combo attacks. I think with this Awakened Malzeno form, and hopefully it indicates for a lot of other fights, you're not going to be able to just throw out your Wire Bug counter in the beginning. You're either going to have to do some evasion or some normal blocking or some other spacing, and then more intelligently land your super counter, which at that point feels satisfying. It feels a lot more earned and a lot more rewarding. Of course, what we have now in Rise in general is the stance switch. This is something that's going to take a lot of muscle memory as well as like forethought to start using both offensively as well as defensively. We saw in a lot of the promotional footage people using the stance switch to kind of evade and get out of things, but there's a tiny bit of a delay. I know a lot of people thought like, oh, this is going to be like the new absolute evasion, but there's a bit of an animation that plays during the stance switch anyways, before you're actually able to start moving. And even then, I've tried it, and I think without any evade window, it's not super safe. You're not completely invincible through the full thing. See, absolute evasion in Generations Ultimate, it procced immediately, it had a ton of iframes, and it sheathed you. The stance switch evasion, it takes a little bit of time to come out. It does give you more iframes, from my understanding, but then you're left with your weapon out as well. Of course, without the absolute readiness sharpening. So it'll be good, and certainly, when you've got things like the Charge Blade that's got ready stance to really pull out a lot of damage when you're doing your AED 2 combos, it's nice to be able to switch into on downs. But in general, I feel like a lot of people, as they're learning it, are just going to use it to switch between really 1 and 2 skills. Like, it's difficult to see people doing completely divergent movesets. The issue between changing your switch skills wasn't ever, oh, I want to have this and this. A lot of times it was you were building your armor set, with one entire set in mind. So outside of your Wire Bug moves, usually you're designing around, like, do I want guard? Do I want power prolonger? Is this going to be an artillery sort of focused weapon or not? I'm going to be using axe hopper, or am I going to be doing a lot more sword attacks, for Charge Blade? Those sort of things were considerations that I've had. So just talking in general about the difficulty of the demo, I have to say, it's probably not a super popular opinion, but I love it. I love arena quests. I always have, of the quest feeling a little bit like a puzzle. A little bit of like a puzzle game where you have to think about, okay, this is the weapon and set that I have. These are the items that are available to me on the map and these resources. How can I use these with a very limited amount of time to get an S rank and try and do it while being as aggressive as possible without carting? And so, same thing with Magnum Malo. Malzeno has, a pretty respectable amount of life, and he pretty much always two-shots you. I don't think there's any 2 large hits in the game that he does that don't just kill you immediately. Maybe if you were doing, like, Rage Slash or tackling or something, you might be able to survive 3. But for the most part, you'll go down in more or less 1 or 2 shots. So I like it. I enjoy these almost more than the full game. By the time you get in the full game and you've got your full critlet set up with, all of your certain skills that you'd have, either be it guard or evasion or Wire Bug Whisperer or whatever it is you need to survive, it's just not the same challenge. And you can't really replicate it, unless they start giving us quests with 10 or 15-minute timers in Sunbreak, which I guess they might. It's not the same level of difficulty. So I enjoy it. It's a challenge. This has not been my cleanest Gunlance run. I just really like the Gunlance. I love looking at it. You know, the full bursts here feel like they're hitting really, really hard. Some of the pokes feel like they've gotten a little bit stronger. I would spend a lot of time going over the damage analysis on this, but because it's not the full build, I'm not sure if it's really worth really spending a lot of time analyzing it and assuming it's going to be great. You know, we did the same thing with Hunting Horn. You know, the Melodic Trio seemed like it was going to be one of the best DPS options in the game, and it got nerfed super hard going into the full game. So I know we're only a couple weeks out, but I'm sure they'll be patching things up until the very last minute. So in terms of content going into the future, right now, I don't know if we're even going to have enough days to do it, but I'd like to get out at least one video of all of the melee weapons, Blade Master weapons before the release of Sunbreak. May not all be against Malzeno. I might end up doing a couple of them against Astalos. Certainly some of them right now feel difficult, at the very least, to say, of actually getting like a very clean, very good clear that isn't just going to be full-on degenerate, double ride, double marionette spider in order to get a clear time. You know, a lot of the mechanics have been changed around. Certainly a lot of the damage has been changed around. Maybe one of the most interesting changes is Courage mode on Hammer now actually feels good. The damage over time, you know, if you were to compare it to like attacking a training dummy, Impact Crater is definitely still the king in terms of damage coming out. But if you've got the little buff going on with the hammer and you're getting off a lot of water strikes and just general combos off on the head, you're going to get a lot of KOs off Malzeno and a lot of, well, at least respectable damage along the line. Not amazing damage, but certainly it actually feels usable now, which I guess is a welcome change. And I guess that's really what I've been looking forward to the most. You know, Rise was a really fun game to play against a lot of monsters, with a small caveat being a lot of weapons ended up feeling like there was one combo you got stuck into. Insect Glaive felt a lot like that, in that either it felt like you were again just doing tornado slash spam, or on certain monsters with certain openings just staying in the air and then landing a diving wyvern. And that just didn't feel fun. You know, it didn't feel fun to play. I don't think it was fun to watch. And that kind of went for the dual blades as well. You know, you had a lot of meta times of people pulling off the jumping dual blades attack over and over again. And it was powerful. You know, you had a lot of iframes and you were pulling out a lot of damage. You could throw Bludgeoner on, so the hit zone didn't even matter. But I don't know. I feel like sometimes there's a little bit more something to a fight now, especially now that we've got so many different types of styles. You know, if you could beat a fight 2 minutes faster, but it's in the most rote, boring way possible, is that exciting to play or exciting to watch? I really don't think so. I want to play in a way that looks interesting. So Piercing Bind to me with, I think it's the Demon Flurry, to me, it feels like you end up doing a lot more interesting, more natural-looking combos without just, like, hopping up and down over the monster over and over again. No shame for the people that use it, especially if you want to keep it in your kit on a switch skill or on both of your switch skills, just, you know, for when a monster hops in the air, I get it. But I just don't enjoy doing that. So I've gotten a number of clears so far. Again, you can check them all out as I'm playing live over at twitch.tv/SDShepherd. Gotten, I think, almost half of the weapons done, and I'm looking forward to getting the rest of them done as well over the next day or two. Couple of Malzeno runs, hopefully with the rest, and then maybe actually learning Astalos as well, who I have to say is really interesting. I could have an entire video on Astalos on his own, you know, going over how they've really incorporated a lot of different movesets from, you know, his GU Bolt Reaver form into his normal form, and what that might say going forward for the rest of the returning roster. In a way, the dream of, oops, all subspecies might actually be coming true. In any case, thanks for watching. I appreciate it very much. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what weapons you've beaten him with down in the comments below. And until next time, this is Shepherd, saying good luck, and have a good hunt.